Okay, so uh, this is going to be my DRG blunt rotation. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, this is going to be my loadout showcase for all of my classes so far. I've worked on each of these classes, as you can see, and promoted them um, at least 3 times. So Driller is my least promoted class, with still being in Bronze 3. Scout being in Silver 1, Gunner being Silver 2, and then Engineer all the way in Platinum 1. So as you can see, Engineer is my top class, considering this is 2 tiers above everyone else. I enjoy Engineer a lot. However, I have a lot of appreciation for the other classes, as you can see by how much I play it. And Driller is actually becoming more fun, even though it's my least favorite or least played class. It is not my least favorite now. I love all of them equally. But yes, without further ado, let's start. I'm going to start off with Driller and then go up from here.
Obstacle! For like a granite smoothie want some done.
So with Driller, I do not run the flamethrower as much. However, I do think that the flamethrower is really good, especially with face melter. Usually when I run flamethrower, it's primarily for rival tech, because of how strong fire damage is to rival tech. Despite how spongy the rival tech enemies are, if you just light them on fire, they just automatically implode. So flamethrower is really good for when that happens. However, I have corrosive sludge pump, which is my second most favorite or second played primary. Second most played primary, and I run volatile impact mixture. I enjoy volatile impact mixture. The ability to slow down dreadnoughts and high and like mobs that are just rushing towards you is just really nice to have. I mean, you could obviously do that with cryo cannon, but sludge pump also does a lot of does some pretty decent DOTs. So I'm still trying to learn sludge pump. So so far it's been pretty good work. I've been learning more and more about the weapon, and in my opinion, it's really good. I think it's very diverse in a way that it also works with rival tech, because cryo cannon is not as effective in rival tech. Just the ability to have this weapon available in case I need it is just really good. But cryo cannon, surprise surprise, is my most favorite of the 3 primaries, and the primary that I use the most. And I run tuned cooler. This is my loadout. To be honest, I don't really think about the loadouts as well, but they're pretty good. I think a lot of these loadouts are inspired by Reapy Ron, like loadout lists. However, sometimes I make my own adjustments here and there, but usually I follow like a build that he does or something, or adjust it to my liking, and then end up following his build, which is completely identical, or it becomes completely identical to whatever build he creates. But yeah, I use Tune Cooler. Haven't tried the other overclocks, but I just really like the extra freezing power and increased flow rate. I definitely feel the difference between this overclock and not using it. So yeah. As for the secondaries, I use EPC as my main secondary, and as you can see, for all of you guys that know, this is definitely the EPC mining loadout right here. But in all seriousness, EPC mining is really fun. I'm still learning how to do it, and it's actually doing pretty good. I'm getting there. I just need to get the timing right for when I hit the big charge with the thin containment field. Once I get that done, it's over. That's all I'm gonna say. No need for scouts, but yeah, EPC is great. I run persistent plasma, but I also run energy rerouting. I'm trying to choose between the two. I don't really feel the difference with persistent plasma, so maybe energy rerouting might be the move. But Subada's the second most played secondary, and probably the, I'm just gonna say this right away, I have not touched a wave cooker, like nothing. I know the wave cooker is probably really good, I just have not. I don't really know why I don't touch the wave cooker at all. Maybe I should. In due time I will. Future video you might see change, but this is what I have so far. Subada, I run oversized magazines, but sometimes I want to run explosive reload, and I do this, where I mainly prioritize ammo and some damage, and yeah, I use Subada for that. Yeah, I think it's a pretty decent weapon. I think it's the most pistol of all the secondaries or pistols in the game, and I think that's pretty good for a driller. You know, EPC is great, but if you just want something that can just easily kill things, or it has a better DPS, then Subada definitely is the one. And yeah, I guess the rest of my loadout is just nothing crazy. I'm mainly going to showcase the primaries and just like kind of skim through everything, or primaries and secondaries, and kind of skim through everything else. For Impact Axe is the only grenade that I use out of all four of these. I don't know, I just never really had any, like, Impact Axes are god tier. They're so good. They just work for every single loadout that I have. Alright, so that's my driller. I'm gonna move on to my scout.
Darkness, here I come.
So the scout, I do not run the M1K as much as the other two weapons. I don't know, maybe it's just because I don't really have great aim, and I'm not too big on like weapons that are just like very sniper like, or just single shot rifles and pistols and whatnot. So like anything that has like a lot of recoil or takes some time to takes like a buffer for you to shoot again, but does like really high damage, that is generally the recipe for a weapon that I'm not using as much. So yeah, unfortunately the M1K is not my main of the three, which it's funny because of all my friends who play Scout really love using the M1K, or most of them rather. So yeah, M1K definitely I run hipster, but sometimes if I want to try and aim, I would choose active stability system. However, I do recognize hover clock being pretty good because you could just slow down for a few seconds. That can be very effective, especially for those montage clips. But AI stability system or active stability system is like really nice because the movement damage or movement penalty is just not there anymore. Yeah, but I run hipster just to, just use it as like a bolt action rifle to reduce the amount of buffer in between each shot. Deep core, it's my top weapon that I use, and the reason why is because, I mean, for all of you guys who keep up with all the updates, GK2 in Season 3 got a huge buff in like damage and whatnot, and ammo, I believe. I'm not too sure what exact buff that they have, but basically you can run this build right here with AI stability engine, and you pretty much have like a laser beam. This can kill things from far away and has no recoil whatsoever. So you just look at like a weak spot from across the map and shoot it a couple times, and they're dead. It's just that OP. Albeit you have to be more scarce about your ammo consumption, but in my opinion, that's very much a good way to compensate for how brutal of a weapon this is now. But yeah, this is my loadout for AI stability engine. I think it's like the regular loadout for this run or this weapon now. I'm not really a big fan of any of the overclocks. This is really the only overclock that I actually enjoy using. And then Plasma Carbine. It is, for some time, I think throughout Season 2, this was essentially just like an upgrade, like a better GK2 in every way, shape, or form. But since GK2 got the buff, Carbine has pretty much slowed down a bit. But it's still a good weapon, I would say. It's very good. DPS is still really good. And with Overtune Particle Accelerator, you can do very good, or like some decent close range damage. Obviously does not have the range that GK2 has, but you know, you don't really need it like that much, in my opinion, if you can compensate with the secondary, which I'll be showing in a bit. But yeah, I'd use Overtune Particle Accelerator. I used to use Impact Deflection, but I don't really know. People really like using Impact Deflection and just shooting like on the floor next to the mobs, but just never really got used to that. So I just stuck with Overtune Particle Accelerator. Also, thermal exhaust feedback I heard is pretty good, but I think I just haven't tried it. I just stick with one overclock and like don't really switch to anything else for the time being until I really feel like it. So yeah. Going off on the secondaries, so I usually build the Bolt Shark with the Drac just to compensate for its aim. It's either that or Boomstick with Shape Shells, so because of the reduced base spread, so I could basically shoot them from like a decent range. But Bolt Shark is usually my go-to weapon, having it as like a crossbow and long range, and the pheromones really do help, especially if you're playing solo. I love running pheromones in solo, just because you can just shoot like an oppressor or praetorian, and that'll occupy most of the swarm, or a decent amount of the swarm. So helps a lot, and it reduces the amount of ammo consumption, which is pretty useful whenever you're playing solo and you don't want to kind of burn through your ammo. And I'd say the same thing with playing with teams. If you don't want to use all your ammo, pheromones is usually my go-to. But yeah, this is my loadout for the specialist. I do have others, but yeah, the specialist is the main one that I play of all the overclocks. Zukov is my favorite when it comes to elimination. Just the fact that embedded detonators is a thing. It's super OP. You just shoot it's the same concept as the Subata's explosive reloads, where you just shoot like some mobs and then reload. At the second that you reload, all those bullets explode. And I think on the Zukov it's super OP just because of how much shots per second that you do with the Zukov. So you could just run around behind like a dreadnought, spam the Zukov in their weak spot, reload, and it does some decent damage. I'd argue it's probably the best overclock out of all the overclocks available. I don't have all the overclocks available, but it is definitely the overclock to use when using Zukov, at least for elimination. Boomstick, special powder. Not much to say. I think the special powder really complements Scout because you have so much movement options now. Just the ability to combine the special powder with the grappling hook makes you basically like a beast. It turns you into Spider-Man. You can essentially go around the map and do some crazy stuff, and it's just amazing. I don't think it's a very good runaway option if you need it. And I know Engineer has like their version of special powder, which is the RJ250 for the PGL, but I don't think that the Engineer has the mobility to make it as fun as scout. I think that's the difference. Like that or this, and the grappling hook alone gives you a lot of options when complementing the special powder. You don't get a grappling hook for engineer. You get like platforms, which is okay-ish, but again, not as fun as like scout with special powder. But I usually run special powder. Sometimes I run shape shells, as said before. But yeah, this is my loadout for special powder. This is the rest of my stuff of high intensity flare, as if that's anything. I usually emphasize on duration for flare gun, reach for grappling hook, and recharge as well. I don't really care about fall damage. I don't need fall damage. Cryo grenade is usually the weapon that, or the throwable that I use for teams. However, if I'm by myself, I use pheromone. Sometimes I use pheromone when I'm in teams, but not as much. And then gunner being the next class.
Just show me what I shoot.
So gunner, hurricane guided rocket system. I don't use this as much, but it's still really fun in my opinion. Overtune feed mechanism is my favorite overclock. However, salvo module is actually, fun fact, it's my first ever overclock, and I like salvo module, but I just really enjoy just holding on to M1 and just letting the rockets just spamming the rockets at like a Praetorian or any of these or any enemy of my choosing. Salvo module doesn't allow you to do that. What it does is that it charges up all your 9 missiles to launch them at once. So that means that you have to click your missiles now, which I think I don't really like using or spam or clicking that much. I'm kind of late when I feel lazy, which is most of the time when I play DRG. I play overtuned feed mechanism, and I think this is probably the second best overclock for the guided rocket system. But I still, if you choose salvo module over overtuned feed mechanism, you're in for a ride, because these missiles, if you just go up close and personal to any like dreadnought or Praetorian or like oppressor, you do some heavy damage, I would say. Still, overtune feed mechanism, the rate of fire and the projectile max speed, I'd say it's just as good. This is like death by 1,000 paper cuts, and this is like death by like sudden blow. So that's like the real difference between the two. I don't know if that's a good analogy, but yeah, this is what I usually run for overtune feed mechanism. Whenever I run salvo module, I think what I do is I switch this to weak spot, and then yeah, I think I stick to stun. I'm not too sure. I changed something else within these other ones, but definitely weak spot is the main priority for salvo module. Heavy autocannon, oh my gosh. I know it says carpet bomber, but that was because I did not, I wanted to hide the fact that I'm a dirty neurotoxin payload user. With fear, it's so OP. I think it's my main weapon that I use for deep dives, just because it basically makes a deep dive so much easier. It's actually kind of unfair. Basically, you can poison enemies with a splash damage range, so you emphasize on splash damage, and then you also emphasize on fear, and essentially they just wither away. They just run away and then they die. Very OP, probably the best overclock, one of the best overclocks in the game altogether, and can essentially help you in fighting off waves in hazard 5.5, and it's done that for me. It's done that for a bunch of my friends. But if I don't want to be a dirty NTP user, carpet bomber is my go-to, and I emphasize on damage here. I think I make that change. I don't know if I do any other changes. I really need to look at some of the my old builds and old loadouts. I don't really have them set up here, but yeah. NTP, and the only compensation, it's quote unquote, it says unstable, but it's just lower damage output, which really is nothing if you consider the fact that like the poison damage basically does the work for you, or does like makes up for it. Alright. But despite heavy autocannon is the weapon that I use the most for elite deep dives, but I think I can say that this minigun is the weapon that I use the most for just regular runs. I don't know, I just really like using the minigun. Gunner is like my first ever class that I've played, so and then just sticking with the minigun, it's always been my go-to, and I enjoy it a lot. I use a little bit more oomph, and it helps me in clearing enemies and whatnot. I think it's with this loadout, it just works very well. I can stun enemies and then shoot them in the head, and they're dead. And yeah, although there is Leadstorm, and people are telling me that Leadstorm is super OP if you can get it to work. So I usually run either I think I run blow through rounds with Leadstorm instead of a little more oomph, just because the huge penalty to stun makes stun basically useless, or this stun mod worthless. So blow through rounds, and do I do anything else? No, I don't think I do, just because like having 14 damage can be really effective with the Leadstorm minigun, but I don't run it as much. I think the reason why is because I don't really like moving as much, or I really like moving a lot, so I'm willing to compensate a little less damage for more mobility, so that's why I use a little more oomph. Okay, so as for secondaries, burst fire is my main, but Bulldog I think falls under the category of single shot high damage and a large buffer in between, hence why I don't use Bulldog as much as the other two weapons. However, when I run it, I usually run either 6-shooter or Magic Bullets. Magic Bullets is pretty OP. You basically shoot around a bunch of enemies, and the bullets kind of like, or the bullet essentially hits or ricochets off to those specific mobs like that you shoot nearby. Very effective if you're facing, or if you're shooting a bullet right in front of them, because that can lead to like multiple headshots. 6-shooter is probably the main overclock that I use for Bulldog, just because I really like using one of my favorite characters in Overwatch, even though I suck at Overwatch and I suck at using this character, is Cassidy, just because it's kind of cool using the pistol. But yeah, 6-shooter is the main one. 6-round cylinder with a faster rate of fire. I can just, yeah, I think that's the reason why it's a faster rate of fire, and you get more in your magazine, so you can just do some nice revolver damage or Cassidy like gameplay. Still suck at both, so that's why I use the burst fire gun or the coil gun. But despite everything I said, I think coil gun has the most buffer and the most single target, but I use this weapon a lot more than the revolver. I'm trying to learn how to use this weapon more. I think there's a lot of potential with this weapon, but I'm struggling a little bit, but I still play it through. I usually run the mole with it, and this is my loadouts. I don't really know why I do this loadout. I think I just watched a repeat run video and was just like, okay, I'll follow through. And yeah, I don't even know what the mole specifically does. It just has better penetration and damage bonus for every terrain pierced. Can be very effective when it comes to shooting like a mob through a terrain. So yeah, I didn't even know that the mole kind of does that. So in a way, coil gun is essentially, or the overclock was essentially useless to me, which is awkward, but who cares? Because I use the burst fire gun as my main, and I think I really like the burst fire gun. I run composite casings if I'm running my lead storm, and then lead spray if I'm running my autocannon. Just because I don't really need that much of a single target damage, because lead storm really does that for me. So composite casings is used mainly if I'm overheated and I need a weapon that still has a sufficient amount of ammo and can like do some burst fire damage to a single target. However, with lead spray and autocannon is primarily like area damage. So for a single shot weapon, I use lead spray, and it's really effective because of the high DPS and the high damage that you can inflict. Can essentially do some lethal damage to dreadnoughts and Praetorians / oppressors. So yeah. Pickaxe. Why do I click there? I usually emphasize area in shields. It's really nice, especially if you are in the escort duty and you're trying to save Doretta. As for nades, I either use incinerary or cluster. Really depends on the situation. If there's people using cryo, I switch to cluster, but otherwise I use incinerary because I really like the fire damage and the Molotov like playstyle. And then last but not least, engineer.
Identify targets and exterminate. That's how it's done.
So, lock 1, least played weapon out of all three. I know I'm gonna get some tomatoes, but lock 1, I essentially don't like using lock 1 as much, just because I don't like being limited to just the mobs that it locks onto, and also the ammo consumption is pretty heavy. It's not as efficient. Maybe if I play it more, I'll learn to like it, but right now lock 1 is like okay-ish to me. It doesn't really do or fit my playstyle compared to the other two, but if I'm still open to trying it out at some point. But yeah, I usually run either Executioner or Seeker rounds, but mainly Executioner. I know Explosive Chemical rounds is really good, but I don't really know. I haven't tried it out. I haven't sat down on it. But this is the loadout that I use for Executioner. Warthog is my second most played, meaning Stubby is my most. And the reason why, I still really like Warthog, don't get me wrong. I think with magnetic pellet alignment, it's kind of like a game changer for me, and I've been using Warthog a lot more. Being able to have more range with the Warthog is really nice. And then I run it like this. The pellet count would be useful, considering having more pellets would inflict more damage and yada yada yada, but the ammo consumption is really bad. I don't really feel comfortable using only 90 max ammo, or having only 98 max ammo, so I just stick with the ammo bags as like a nice little safety. However, maybe I'll make the switch. Maybe I'll stick to this and try this out for one run and come back to this video to see if anything changed. But yeah, I usually run ammo bags with magnetic pellet alignment. This is my build with magnetic pellet alignment. Another loadout that I use is lightweight magazines with 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. I don't run this as much. I think Warthog's range is limited, or is a little shorter than the Subata or the Stubby. I was going to say Subata, but I think that's the reason why I don't really like using Warthog as much as I like using Stubby. But the magnetic pellet alignment kind of compensates for that. So yeah. So Stubby, main weapon that I use for deep dives and just altogether Hazard 5. Really good weapon. I really like the DPS, and I also really like the electricity. I think the shock damage, or the shock effect, or electricity effect, and the range pretty much makes this weapon a go-to for any sort of fights against swarms, because it just slows them down, and essentially I can get a decent amount of hits from a decent range. So like any dreadnought missions, I don't have to get up close and personal, or feel like I have to get up close and personal. I can just shoot from afar and still get some damage done. EM refire, I usually run that, but however I can switch to super slim rounds. Really depends. I think I prefer EM refire booster a lot more than super slim rounds, just because the DPS and the significantly more electrical damage makes it worth the switch, or worth the the lack of, or the loss of distance that you can get from the super slim rounds. But yeah, all 2s is my loadout for either of these. So yeah. Now for my secondaries, Engineer has probably the best secondaries in the game of all the of all the other classes. And Shard Diffractor is my least played secondary. However, I really like it a lot. I would want to play it more, but the issue is that Shard Diffractor does not compensate for some of the, or for the lack of area damage that the primaries have. So of course you can run magma or volatile impact reactor, and also maybe, was it feedback loop? Yeah, either of these to make up for it. But I love using overdrive booster. If I can trust my team into doing a bunch of area damage to like swarms and whatnot, overdrive booster essentially allows me to focus on long range targets, like menaces that are far. If I can hit them with any sort of electricity, I could just switch to the overdrive booster and do some extra damage because of hydrogen rupturing. So I just essentially use Stubby as a taser, and then Shard Diffractor as like a laser that just eliminates them. PGL is my second most played secondary, and I like running compact rounds with PGL, just because whenever I run Pack Rat, I usually run this loadout. But as you can see, my area damage is 110, effect radius 3, max ammo 15. But compact rounds, 120, 3.5, and 14. So really it's just 1 ammo lost. But to compensate, you get 10 more area damage and a 0.5 effect radius. In my opinion, it's worth it. I like using PGL with this kind of loadout. Good for swarms, and yeah, the stun and the fire makes it really nice for just killing off any just mobs that can easily die with this. However, Breach Cutter is my main. Surprise, surprise. It is the most popular secondary, and for good reason too. The ability to use it as both an area, like to clear off swarms, and to hit like single target damage, use effective single target damage, makes this weapon like totally worth it. I run Inferno with Breach Cutter. However, I used to do Return to Sender, which essentially you hold on to M1, and then once you release it, the beam that it shoots out goes backwards. So that means that I can shoot a Praetorian and then go back, and I've essentially done, if I do the math, 1,100 and is it 1,100? Yeah, 1,150 damage to or the DPS to the Praetorian alone. Very effective, I would say so myself. But Inferno, I love the fire damage, especially with Plasma Trail and Stun. So basically what that does is that, similar to the PGL, anyone that walks into the Plasma Trail or the beam gets stunned and then lit on fire, so they just get eliminated. And Breach Cutter, in my opinion, does an effective job in doing just that compared to the PGL. But I still appreciate the PGL. I think one thing that I really enjoy about the PGL is, again, the overclocks for it are probably the best overclocks of all the weapons. RJ250, really good at Traverse, Hyper Propellant, essentially a delete button for single targets, and then Fat Boy is a nuke. Like, where can you go wrong? It's so good. But yeah, I think that is it for all my secondaries. Pickaxe. I run 2 turrets instead of 1. I think the DPS using 2 turrets alongside the armor breaking makes this really effective as just like a supplementary weapon and clearing off swarms. Lure is my main throwable. I think I use it jumps between lure and proximity mines, but I definitely love using lure. Being able to just bring enemies to like a little area and just hold them off while I just shoot them with either the breach cutter or the stubby. Game changer. And yeah, this is my loadout showcase. I think that's really it. Nothing else to say here. I love DRG. I think there's still, even with this much time I've had playing DRG, I think I'm gonna be playing it a lot more. Maybe until I feel burnt out, but so far I don't feel burnt out, despite having around 540 hours in this game as of this video. A lot of things to do, and yeah, I think now I've gotten most of the overclocks in the game. I think I'm only missing a couple of driller overclocks, but everything else, engineer, gunner, and scout, I think I have all of the overclocks available. Either within the I either bought it already and have it ready to use, or it's in the forge just waiting to be used. But as you can see, I don't have as much. If you notice the top left, and I know it's kind of bad, I barely have any Magnite, I think that's, or Bismore, sorry, and I have no Magnites at all. That's because I've been just spamming overclocks, and I'm trying to get more cosmetic overclocks, so yeah, that's another thing. But I think that is all. Thank you for watching, and yeah, I'm done. I'll see you guys later.